So this is Reverend Dr. Arleen Bump Austin, and I am so delighted to be interviewing you. And I'm Dorianne Cotter Lockhart for those who are listening to my voice on this recording. And so we're just grateful to have this opportunity to talk with you and learn about your whole life and history so that we can retain this for the Science and Line Archives and Library so that others can learn from you as one of our wise sages.
Oh, thank you.
So,
I was born in San Jose, California, after next week, 78 years ago. And I was raised there until we moved away, obviously. Sorry. I have a brother, an older brother. My father was in law enforcement for many years. My mother was took care of the books for a little family grocery. Yes, I was raised a Roman Catholic, and it was lovely because my grandmother's house was just across the street, and so every Sunday after the last Mass, I would go. My job was to go get the priest, and then he came over for our family dinner. So I got to see the wine cellars and all those great places. So I went to San Jose High School. I'm still friends with about 4 people from there. Doesn't sound like much. I got married to Oscar Pitcock. Now it's coming. Oscar Pitcock in the early 60s, and I think 60. And we were together for, I think, 19 years or so when we got divorced here in Fort Lauderdale. We have 2 children, Phyllis and Bruce. And they are, one lives in Old Lyme, Connecticut. The other lives in Minneapolis. And they're good. So I'm happy about that. My fondest memory, my mother is sitting in the kitchen watching her iron, and then I would say, well, ironing is good, but what about the stars? How do we get to touch the stars? I always ask those kinds of questions. When I was 12 or so, I had my family, my father's sisters and brothers all owned ranches in Morgan Hill along the Coyote Creek area, and so I spent all my summers there, and we picked apricots and prunes and walnuts and all this, and I learned to drive a tractor. The story that I like the most about this is that after the apricots were all picked, they lay them out on flat trays to dry in the sun, and then they take them to the dehydrator, and that's how we get these little packages of from Driscoll, which is I see all over the place, from there. So anyway, after the morning sun would be done, morning picking would be done, then all the women would come into this shed that just had a cover on it and some poles to hold it up. And the men did whatever the men were doing. And I was always asking questions. So I was too young to use the knife and stuff. And in those questions, everybody's busy working, cutting cots is what we call it, cutting apricots, and lay them flat. And I started in on, like, how do we get to the stars, and what do you suppose holds the planet up, and and where is it exactly that God is watching us, and stuff. And one of my favorite uncles said to me, "You've got to shut her up. She will not stop talking." And I really didn't. I just would throw these questions out. And so, and he would say, "Nobody wants to listen to you." Fast forward 1974, I guess, is when I got licensed. All the family, we were in the Monterey Church at the time. Oscar Pitcock was pastor. And I was assistant. And in that experience, to get my ordination or licensing, I think it was ordination, I invited all the family, all of them. None of them ever came near the church. My father said, "I don't want to hear anything you're doing as long as my grandkids are fine. I don't need to hear about it. I don't care." So they all came, and I was shocked. I didn't know they were coming. So this uncle that I preached in front of 25 women doing apricots was there. And afterwards he came to me and he said, well, you did it. Now you're getting paid for all the talking you did all those years.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a great story. It was great. It was fun.
So let's back up a little bit. At what point in your life did you find Science of Mind, and how were you introduced to it?
I was married to Oscar Pidcock, and we were living in San Jose, California, and had moved to, in the process, I remember timing, moved to Daly City, South San Francisco. And he was an alcoholic. He was, I found out later, from the age of 13. So everything that he did revolved around, just trying to work with that. And I met him in the same building that my father had an office. And so we became friends that way. And I was his secretary. And so when he said, I love you and I want you to marry me, with a lot of trauma around all that. Oh, he fired me. And he said, well, so this is what we're going to do, kind of thing. So we went to, I worked for the United States Parachute Association in Monterey for 4 years. And I was really the executive director. And that's 39,000 members. And we did a monthly magazine, which I edited and all. So prior to that, I am jumping around. Prior to that, Oscar would leave in the morning and come back at night, and all of a sudden our lights turned off. The electricity got turned off, and it turned out that Oscar had gotten fired from his job and was leaving every morning and coming back at the right time. And he went to a park in what I don't know what they call it now, Willow Glen, but San Jose, and the San Jose church was there. It still is. It's on, I think, Clark Street. And Robert Scott was the minister who, I don't know if he founded it or not, but he was the minister. And Oscar was walking by one day and there was a sign on the curb that says meditation, 12 o'clock noon, everyone welcome. So he said, he went in, didn't understand any of it, but it felt better. And the person that was giving him that he was talking to gave him her business card. And she said, I'm moving to Napa, but, I'd love to contact you and all. So that was the beginning of kind of a downward spiral. But one day he came home and he tore out his dresser drawer, dumped everything on the bed. I said, what are you doing? He said, I've got to find that card. I didn't even know what card because I didn't know he had done all this. So he finds the card and he calls the number, San Jose Church, and they said, she's in Napa. She started a church in Napa. Reverend Ruth Veery Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T. And so he called her up and he said, I'm in very serious trouble and I don't know what to do. She said, can you get here to Napa? Yes. So he said, I don't have much gas. I think I have enough to get there. She said, just get here. So he went there and talked to her, and they really connected. And while he was there, they had a little office in the back of a cleaners in downtown Napa. And while they were in this back room, the office area, someone came in and said, I want to make a donation of $50, but I want it to go to someone who needs it. And she handed it to him and said, there's your gas. So that was kind of a yay, So that settled, and that happened. That went on. He was involved for 2 years before I got involved. He stopped drinking without any assistance whatsoever, other than teaching Science of Mind and lots of counseling with her. So it was a couple of years, but I had rheumatoid arthritis, and I was declared to be incurable. After about a year, my daughter, right when she was born, I watched him transform his life. I watched him he lost 40 pounds in 2 months without trying. He just ran with this teaching fabulously. So I watched it, and because he'd go every Sunday, wouldn't come back till around 5 or 6. And then he went twice a week to the classes too. So I went to my doctor, Bernard Engelman, who was then the president of the National Arthritis Foundation in San Mateo, California. And I would go almost weekly because I was a guinea pig for drugs. They didn't know what to do with it. Other than they say, you're just going to get worse. Because at one point I was in bed for 9 months with just a sheet because the pain was so bad. So Dr. Engelman worked with me and we took, I don't know, I remember the gold shots, but there were all kinds of stuff. And he said, we don't know if any of this is going to help and it may hurt. I said, well, I can't hurt any more than I am. Give me the magic pill, kind of. So one day I went in there for the shot and I was really agitated and I was really upset and I was kind of bitching and moaning, I guess, about my husband or my family. I don't know who it was. But he looked at me and he said, Arleen, he said, when are you going to quit blaming everybody for your problems and just solve them because they're yours? And I was so angry. I was so angry because, first of all, I wanted him on my side, and I left. I walked out, slammed the door, left. But I remembered that. And here was the clue. The next morning, I could not get out of bed. I was in such terrible pain. Now, I found out later after I got into Science of Mind that there's your clue that if something is happening, you react to it, kind of thing. So I said to Oscar, I'll go with you to church one Sunday, but I want to sit in the back and I don't want anybody to talk to me. And so he called and warned 25 people maybe, and warned her and said, she's coming, so nobody say anything. So I sat in the back row, brought a novel so I could read because I wasn't going to be interested in anything, and which I did. And we left, and he asked how I felt, and I said, I feel okay. I didn't understand any of that, but I feel better than when we went in. Clue number 2, kind of thing. So I started going with him, and all that period of time, I saw his evolution, and so I started taking classes. I started counseling with her twice a week and taking classes twice a week, plus Sunday driving from San Francisco to Napa, an hour and a half each way. And we did that for a few years. So then we moved to Monterey, where Carlton White had resigned and moved to Chicago. So Oscar was in Carlton's ministerial training class. So we used to drive down every Saturday as well for him to do the classes. They were all-day classes. He offered the church in Monterey to Oscar, so he took it. And we moved from Napa to Monterey. And during that time, after a little while, I got licensed in 74 and ordained in 79. The early months of 79, the founders of the Fort Lauderdale Center, Norman and Dorothy Lundy, they had an active, this was a huge church. He had 600 or 700 people on Sundays at the time. And he said, we're getting ready to retire, but we want a couple. And we've been watching you two for a while, and we saw your story, because at the end of 5 years, I had no evidence of any arthritis showing up there was nothing. I spent 2 weeks, I'm bouncing around, bear with me. I spent 2 weeks in UCLA Medical Center in San Francisco, where they worked with me physical therapy to show me how I could be able to get around, because I had claws of a 90-year-old woman. They had it written in the little journals at the time. And so I did that. So just from taking classes and counseling regularly and changing my outlook, it all went away. Wow. And so Lundy's said, we think we want you to come to Fort Lauderdale. I was working for the Parachute Association at the time, who had asked me if I would be their executive director for some of the stuff that I did. And I said, no, my goal is to be at ministry for full time. And he said, well, we're going to move to Washington, D.C. to be near the FAA, and we really want to offer you that job. And and all. And I said, can't, but I'll help you set it up. So I moved to Washington, D.C. for 9 weeks or something, and got it all set up. And when I came home on Thanksgiving Eve that year, it was 76, I guess, we got a call from Norman Lundy, who said, we really want the two of you to come and be our co-pastors here. And so when I got on the phone, I said, I'll only do it in one regard. I need to be a full-time paid minister, or I can't do it. And they said, oh no, that's our requirement. You have to be here full-time, and you have to do that. They were very gracious. And so that was Thanksgiving Eve. And by March of the next year, which would have been 76 maybe, we moved to Fort Lauderdale and embraced that center greatly. We took second year from Carleton 2 years in a row. He was a master Bible scholar. Ruth Wright was my first teacher. Carleton, we drove down every week to do second year, and which they called it second year that time, and it was Bible and Troward, I think, and he's an expert in all of them. But that was wonderful. So in '79, Oscar and I got divorced, and I went to a little tiny church in El Cajon, California, which is 15 miles east of San Diego. And little tiny church, the minister was gone, I don't know, 15 people maybe. And I remember sitting with the board of directors, trustees at the time, and they said, what do you want? What is your goal? And I asked them, what is your goal? And the reply almost unanimously was, keep this fucker going. But it was like very adamant, and I loved it because that's what I wanted. I needed to have that kind of background to do what we had to do. So that's where I met Nelson Bump. And we were there for 2 or 3 years, I think, before I got a call to go to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which was major change, of course. And I was there for 10 years, and I loved it. I had no desire to ever leave it, ever. I loved it there. We did very well. And in Glendale, there was a lady, she'd been other places, but a minister, close friend of mine in the Glendale church by the name of Helen Street. And Helen and I were very close. And she died. She died of a brain aneurysm. It was very tragic. So I came down for 3 weeks to do some grief counseling with everybody and to speak and put it all together, and again, so they could candidate. And at the end of that time, they said, no, we really want you to come. And I said, no, I'm in Calgary. I just really want to support you in getting through this. And they said, no, we really want you to come, go talk to somebody. So I called Dr. Frank Rishley, who was in Redondo Beach, and told him what was going on. And I said, I don't know, I'm so connected with these people, and I didn't want to leave Calgary and, all of that. And Dr. Rishley said, he was head of Department of Credentials and Placement at the time. And he said to me, you must follow your heart. You must always follow your heart. Well, at the time, my heart said, I need to be in Glendale. And I was also trying to work with my marriage to Nelson Bump because he wasn't happy in Canada. And I thought, well, maybe he'll be, coming here. So I said yes. And that was after 10 years, 90 maybe or something. Mm-hmm. So I was there for a year and a half, I think. And then Fort Lauderdale opened up. And they asked me if I would be interested in coming. Bill asked me if I would be interested in coming. And I said, yeah, I'd always thought of it as my heart home because, I didn't want to leave Fort Lauderdale when I got divorced. I wanted to stay and teach and stuff, but that could not be. And so it was like I could go home. That was what and my daughters lived here at the time as well. 90s. So we came here. That's where I met Jim Lockhart. He was on the board at the time. And I fell in love with all the people, and I thought, no, this is completion for me, because I'd never had completion. So that was on this past December 1st. It was 22 years. And yeah, and we've gone through all kinds of ups and downs and drama and stuff. People laugh and say, so does every other church do the same thing. And so we just kind of let it go at that what's the word? The placement of what are you going to do and what are you not going to do and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had lots of students in Calgary, and I have, and I, of course, had a lot here too. So teaching is my heart.
Who are some of your students and well-known students in the movement and students of students?
Yeah, Frank White was, he went to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. Actually, he was candidating for the Elkhorn Church when I was leaving, but Frank White was there. Then going to Calgary, they'd never had Science of Mind. It was a small little group, that, like a study group, that had been really doing well as a small study group with Dr. Candace Beckett, who I adore. And she had this little group, and they were saying, and the minister from somewhere else was resigning, and they said, well, you come and do this. So some of the teachers from that, Doug Craig became a teacher. Now he's in this little Calgary center. Lloyd Klein, who is now in near Vernon, British Columbia. Darlene Schneider, who last I heard she had a group in somewhere near the Vancouver airport. Then coming back to Glendale, I can't take credit for all of them, but because they were already in the middle of fourth year and I had to finish the fourth year up. But there were Marilyn Jensen Johnson, Jen Shoemaker. There's quite a few that we used to call it the elite clique, because every one of them went into ministry, and I really took over. It was a 2-year course at that time, and I really only did the last course. But they're still out there. We have, I see when we had our conferences out there, I always would see them. And then here, when I came back here, I think that Bill Tolliver had already started the ministerial training class, because Jim, second year,
Jim was one of your students.
It's for the last part of fourth year training. Mm-hmm. And so Greg Hart, Hobbit Forest.
In what ways have you been involved in the larger organizational level of New Thought, such as RSI, AGNT, CSL?
Well, RSI has always been my love, and I always had a leadership role in it, even as pastor. So I worked with CSL, now the name, on education for years. I was on the board of directors for 10 years or more, I think, and was president for a few years in the early 90s. And I continued to stay on the board, and then I got involved with the education team. So I'm now re-entering, because I lost this year because of all the church and some of the stuff that was happening. And so I'm on the practitioner education subcommittee, doing curriculum for practitioners. So I'll be able to jump into that full time soon.
Anything about your time as president of RSI, what was going on at that time?
Yeah,
those years?
A lot of turmoil in those years. A lot of turmoil. They were coming from the patriarchy, and then I showed up. A lot of it, I wasn't sure what the hell I was doing. You kind of go, because it was crisis management. Everything was crisis management. And I loved it, because I got to go around and meet people and visit churches and do all that and be a support that way. Organizational wise, no, I don't think I was really clear about it. I hear what people are saying now that they do. And my sense at the time was that you get the best curriculum you can, and you make sure everybody's trained and all of that kind of stuff.
So your focus was always education.
Always education. Always I'm a good speaker on Sundays, and so that helps. But it's about, if you get it, then the world will get it. And that's why I'm really not retiring. I'm just going to go do my ministry in another way in Medford, Oregon. So not sure how.
Have you been involved in any interfaith, ecumenical, or other types of organizations related?
Well, I belonged to AGNT for a while, and then there's another one I did too.
INTA?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I thank you for that. It's been a while.
So tell us a little bit about your current personal spiritual practices. What are you engaged in?
My favorite
currently.
I'm a great journalist. I write all the time. Since I've gotten married last July, my husband, who's a voracious reader about self-development, and the future of the world, and all of that kind of stuff, and we've slipped into, because I do my practice right away. Sometimes I even do it if I'm in bed, just do my verbal or read. But he loves the philosophy in the morning. So he gets up really early and I get up later. And the first thing we're doing is getting our cup of coffee and we start talking philosophy and science mind. I'm teaching him privately about science mind. But in terms of the personal time, treatment time, I have a lot of treatment time. I read the books, whatever's happens to come up. Harvey and I do prayer together lots of times. Mm-hmm. So it's just a natural part of who I am. I often will stop in the middle of the day and say, you need to recenter yourself, like that. So it's ingrained. It's ingrained.
What impact do you believe religious science and science of mind has on the world?
Not a lot.
Yeah. What's the potential then?
Oh, the potential is there. Absolutely. I think we've got, I'm looking for new leaders, up and coming. And I haven't been to anywhere in the last 2 years because of this construction, what we've done. So I don't know a lot of these new people. But I hear a lot from the other ones because I get calls all the time. The future, we need to look at how we can do it differently. I don't have an answer to that, but there are people here that do. And the fact that we're still standing, the fact, we've been through a lot as an organization, and me here in Fort Lauderdale, speaks to the principle. I remembered Robert Bitzer saying, never sacrifice principle, not even for a special occasion. And that has talk about a spiritual practice, that has gotten me through all kinds of stuff.
What words of wisdom would you like to ensure that are recorded as part of the legacy that you leave to the world? What would you like to say to people who are either long-time science of mind practicing science of mind, or they're just coming to it now?
Well, I just said it. Never sacrifice principle, not even for a special occasion. Because coming into a professional ministry and practitioners requires that you move into the clarity of what the principle is, and that's what you're teaching, and not diluting it with other things. So I've been very strict about what we do and what we teach here and stuff. I'm all for learning from other ways and doing that, which I do personally, but never sacrifice principle. That's the teaching. God is, I am, and all is well. So if you're in the middle of chaos out there, which it looks like we are, I can just very calmly just say, I'm not sacrificing what I know as a spiritual being in order to get into the drama of the crisis that's going on, because this too shall pass. Mm-hmm. So, but I think we have a lot of work to do. I think part of the slowness of the growth, and I don't know that, I'll know more once I'm back involved, but is that you have to clean up your stuff first. You know, the shadow. You've got to deal with the elephants in the room, and I think we haven't always done that. And I don't know now what's going on other than what I read. But I think the potential is there. Certainly something I spread wherever I go, all over the place. You know, there's no doubt about that. But we've got to have the leaders to bring that potential into form. And so I'm very excited about seeing how it's going to take place, because it will take place. I'm announcing my retirement next week from here. And I've done a lot of, I'm certainly in deep grief, but it really is, my mandate is, you know, as long as the people are learning and we're stable and you know, everything is in place as it should be, then it's okay for me to go. You know, I probably would have retired sooner, but I was really clear that I have to see this, you know, the church got raggedy under my watch, and I have to be clear that it's built itself back up. So we have some wonderful leaders here that are doing fine work, and so it really is easy for me to close the door on this one. Yeah,
and open the door to your
there's a new door. Yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'll be teaching it.
Fantastic.
My pleasure, honey.